Hey guys, it's Drew. Thank you for checking out the Sober Fix podcast, where we talk about addiction and living life sober, one day at a time. If you like what you hear, go ahead and follow us. And if you get some time, check out our Instagram page at the Sober Fix podcast, and also our YouTube and TikTok at the Sober Fix. Hope you enjoy the episode. All right, we are at season 2, episode 16. Good times. I think we're at 40 something episodes. So fun. Started off as, and I've talked about it a bunch of times on here before, just fun, just me and my phone. It was almost therapeutic. It was almost like a journal. I want to do a little reading to start us off today. And this is from the AA book, He Only Lived to Drink, from page 451. It's the last 2 paragraphs. More important, I came to believe that I cannot do this alone. From childhood, despite the love I experienced, I had never let people, even those closest to me, inside my life. All my life, I had lived the deepest of lies, not sharing with anyone my true thoughts and feelings. I thought I had a direct line to God, and I built a wall of distrust around myself. In AA, I faced the pervasive we of the 12 steps and gradually realized that I can separate and protect my sobriety from outside hazards only in as much as I rely on the sober experience of other AA members and share their journey through the steps to recovery. And I understand that people get sober in a lot of different ways. It's not always AA. It's not always NA. People are getting sober today through a lot of different methods. And I think it's important to really encourage anyone who is on the path of recovery, who is thinking about sobriety, who's deciding to put the drink or the drugs down, to encourage them whichever avenue they are taking. And that can be hard because sometimes, a lot of times, at least for me, it's the things that you've experienced, the things that have helped you in your life, oftentimes we kind of adopt as the primary way of doing something. So, for example, I got introduced to AA when I was 17, 18. From that point on, my idea of getting sober, my idea of recovery, my idea of a solution for the problems that I was facing with alcohol or just facing being completely sober and uncomfortable, I always saw the solution or the way of getting sober as AA. That's just how I thought about it. That was my experience. That was what I used to get sober. And so I think in the back of my head, it's always been, hey, like, this is how you get sober. You go to AA. And I found, especially over the last probably year, that there's a lot of ways that people get sober. And there's a lot of correlations between the different avenues of sobriety. There's a lot of things that are kind of non-negotiables. And me and Daryl talked about that in our last episode. There's some things that are kind of universal. And one of those, and I'm going to go over some of those today. I want to touch a little bit on the paragraph that I just read. And I love the first line. I came to believe that I could not do this alone. That was the obsession for me, was this lingering idea inside my head that I can get sober and I can turn around all of these failures and all of this drama and all of these destructions of my addiction. I can stop this when I really feel like it. Like, I know that things are not going very well right now, and I know my liquor consumption is continuing to increase. I know the drug usage is continuing to increase. But when I'm really ready, like, I remember telling myself when I was young, I'm having fun, I can worry about all the getting responsible and all that stuff later. Problem was the years just continued to pile on top of each other. And it went from, oh, I've been getting higher for the last year or two. Oh my gosh, it's been the last 10 years. And time was it was flying. It flies fast in addiction. When you have a microscope on getting drunk or loaded 24/7, time flies. I could see how someone could end up being 40, 50, 60 years old and having this rude awakening of, oh my gosh, I've just spent the vast majority of my life chasing drugs and alcohol, being in jail, being in rehab, being in treatment, whatever the case may be. And looking back and just having those feelings of regret and that question of, how did it get this far? This is not what I signed up for. How did I get to here? I went to a high school party at 16 and I'm 45, 50, 55, 60 and I'm just leaving. How does that happen? I want to talk about another part of this paragraph. And it says, I built a wall of distrust around myself. And that's the isolation that we've talked about on here before. It's the putting the walls up. It's as time goes on, at least for me, I'll speak for myself, I started to rub people the wrong way. I started to hurt them emotionally because of what I was doing, because I continued to put drugs and alcohol first. I started to hurt people. And what happens? They get pissed off and they hurt you back. And you have all of these strained relationships and you stop trusting people. And I had all these experiences with police getting arrested and I felt like I was always being harassed. And at the time, I could not see that it was my fault. I just saw what was happening externally. And the walls start going up. And I started to isolate myself from everyone. I didn't trust anyone anymore. I had these terrible relationships because how am I going to have a good relationship when I'm already dedicated to drugs and alcohol? Like, it's just not going to happen. I failed to realize that for a lot of years. And the walls go up and God starts getting edged out. And they say that's ego edging God out. That's basically what I did. Like I never had a problem believing that there was a higher power, there was a God. I went to church when I was younger. I never had an issue with that. The issue I had was maintaining a relationship with a higher power when I know the things that I'm doing consistently on a daily basis are not okay. Like I just know it's not right. And I don't label it as sin, but I know that it's that idea of just, I am not living right. Like I am having to push people away. I'm having to constantly lie to others, which in turn is really me lying to myself. And I just couldn't relate to too many people anymore towards the end. So I push people away, isolate. I want to get into this last paragraph. The rewards of sobriety are bountiful and as progressive as the disease they counteract. Certainly among these rewards for me are release from the prison of uniqueness and the realization that participation in the AA way of life is a blessing and a privilege beyond estimate. A blessing to live a life free from the pain and degradation of drinking and filled with the joy of useful, sober living, and a privilege to grow in sobriety one day at a time and bring the message of hope as it was brought to me. Wow, there is a lot in there. I love how it says as sobriety being as progressive as the disease they counteract. And we talk about that all the time. I'm always talking about that. Addiction or alcoholism is progressive. What does that mean? It means it continues to get worse. Like just when you think you've hit like a rock bottom emotionally, believe me, if you continue on, you continue digging, you will find something worse. here's another part of that progressiveness. Let's say you've been using or drinking for 10 years and you go to detox and then you go to treatment. You're in treatment for 3 months, 6 months, whatever the case may be. Maybe it's just 30 days. You end up getting a year of sobriety. You don't have a sip of alcohol. You don't do any drugs. You got your recovery program. Things are going well. You slip up. You get overconfident. You start thinking, I don't need to do as much to stay sober. I feel pretty comfortable on a day-to-day basis interacting with those around me. I feel pretty content not drinking. I'm kind of used to it now. I'm used to telling people I don't drink. I'm used to being maybe one of a few people that when I go out with friends, I don't have a cocktail or a beer in my hand. Like, I'm starting to get used to that. But life starts to get rough. All of a sudden, the color that you see life in starts to fade to that black and white. Things are they're just not quite the same. You're kind of on edge. You feel tight. You feel pissed off, anxious, frustrated. Things that you normally enjoy just start to bother you a little bit. Eventually, it gets to the point where sobriety just becomes so unbearable. Like, you're just tired of waking up and you haven't been doing much to stay sober, and you're not really calling people that you really should be calling. You don't really have a support network. You've just kind of been hanging on to sobriety with dear life. And it reaches a point where you look at your options, you go, okay, I can continue living like this, but I'm so miserable. And I know what's going to happen if I pick up that drink, but you know what? Like, I just can't take this anymore. So you end up going to the bar, getting alcohol and drinking. So prior to this, you've been sober for a year. I have always found with the progressiveness of addiction and alcoholism, within a couple of weeks, I will be right back to the spot I left off before I went to treatment. Right back. I'll be drinking the same amounts, and oftentimes it gets even worse, especially after you've had a period of sobriety. Because once you start drinking, not only are you dealing with the chaos in your head again, but you're also having to drink more because now you know a little bit about recovery. You've been sober for a year. You've been hearing things about your disease that you could relate to, and that's starting to run through your head now as you're drinking again. You're thinking, man, like, one is too many, 1,000's not enough. You're starting to think of these sayings that you hear from people that are sober, and now you're living it because you were sober for a year and now you're back to the drinking. That's the progressiveness. Even after a period of sobriety, we will end up drinking or using the same amounts, usually worse, and it will continue to get worse. I want to talk about one other line in here. It says, certainly among these rewards for me are release from the prison of uniqueness. Now, the prison of uniqueness, what I think they're referring to, or at least a portion of this that I can relate to, is when you've been having trouble with drinking or drugs. I just say drinking. I mean both. Either way. Either or. You've been having trouble, and maybe you just go to a support group. People that are sober, people that are either working an AA program, whatever the case is, just some type of support. Maybe it's a support group at church. Maybe it's Celebrate Recovery. Maybe it's Smart Recovery. Whatever the case. Maybe it's just a men's group, Bible study, whatever the case may be. And you start hearing other people talking about their addiction. And you start to think, like, I've noticed that addiction for me is going to try and make me unique. It's going to make me not relate to what the people that are sober are saying to me in an attempt that I can continue on with my drinking. And it could do it a number of ways. One of the ways it used to do is I would listen to people and I could totally relate, but for some reason in my head, I'm replaying every time I tried to get sober and I couldn't. And so the uniqueness is I think that, you know what, like this recovery stuff is working for you, but there's no way it's going to work for me. Like it's just not. I've tried everything. There's no way it's going to work. Or the uniqueness could be listening to people and you're looking for that one thing that's different. And I see this a lot now. I lead a beginners meeting on Sunday nights on Zoom, and I love it. It's been a commitment that I love. It gets me there every single week, no matter how I feel about it. I get to hear from a bunch of people that are brand new all the way up to people that have a ton of time. And there's a lot of people that come in and maybe they have a DUI and they start listening to people talking about their addiction. And maybe this person has a DUI, but maybe they haven't been drinking for too long. Maybe they haven't gone that deep in alcoholism. Maybe they've never tried hard drugs. Maybe they've never lost their family. Maybe they've never had legal issues. Maybe they've never overdosed. Maybe they've never lost much from drinking yet. And the uniqueness is going to tell them, look, I can't relate to this. Like they'll hear someone open up the meeting talking about, man, when I was drinking, I ended up in a psych ward and I'd always be going to jail and I'd be going to detox and I overdosed. And they hear that and they think, oh, I can't be an alcoholic. There's no way. There's no way. I've got a nice job. I have a career. I went to college. I don't have any DUIs. I don't have any felonies, misdemeanors. Never been to the hospital for my drinking. Maybe they have a spouse that wants them to get their drinking in check. Maybe that's the only thing that's brought them to the support group. But that uniqueness will tell them, hey, look, you don't fit in here. You don't belong. You're not as bad as them. That's another way that the uniqueness affects us. And I think when this reading, when they're talking about it, when they're referencing uniqueness, I think they're just saying, look, like I realized I was one of them. Like I realized I could get help in recovery. I realized I could relate to these other people that were sober. I realized that I too had a story to tell that people could relate to. We don't have to all go through the same things, but what we can really relate to is how we felt. What it was like to take a drink, oftentimes with the idea that it's going to be one or two, and it always ends up being more. I want to go to another, I found some tips to stay sober online. I want to go through these real quickly. I think some of them are really obvious, but I think that sometimes it's the obvious stuff that we need to hear. Sometimes it helps to hear it. It helps to have if you're someone that's getting sober for the first time and you don't have any experience with 12-step work, you've never been to Smart Recovery, you don't have a bunch of friends that are sober and kind of have given you an idea of how sobriety works and how recovery works, it helps to get at least a brief outline of like what you should be potentially looking for in the beginning. Now, the first one on here says, stay out of risky situations. Sounds pretty obvious to me. Yet I look back and it wasn't that obvious because I remember going to treatment and getting sober for a few days and thinking that I could go back to a lot of the same places. It's crazy to really think about. Like, my life would be going terribly because of drinking and getting high. So bad to the point where I end up going to a detox and treatment. Then I get out, done a lot of work on myself, sober for the first time in, let's say, years. And my head tells me that I can go back to the same spots. And you hear this a lot with people where they get sober for a little bit and they think, oh, like I'm doing so well. Like I could show my friends how well I'm doing. And I could show them that it's possible to still hang around everyone and not drink. And I could be a positive influence. And a lot of times that doesn't go well. It's like we need every extra chance or opportunity that we can get to stay sober. We need to take advantage of. And one of those, a good way to do that is to just stay out of risky situations. And I always tell people, look, especially with the holidays coming up, if you are debating going somewhere, like if there is an internal fight inside you that's like, I got this invite to this Christmas party. It's a lot of my friends that I used to drink, a couple of them that I used to get high with. Most of them are doing pretty well now. I feel pretty good. Been sober for a little bit. I feel like it'd be cool to see them. And one minute you're thinking it's a great idea to go and it's safe. And then the next you're really fighting with yourself internally and you're like, oh, I don't know. Like this could be very bad. I hope I don't see this person. If this happens, this could be bad. I think if you're early on in sobriety and you're going through an internal battle over whether you should go somewhere and see certain people, you just shouldn't go. It's just not worth the risk. Because at the end of the day, if there's going to be people there that drink normally or normal drinkers are asking you to go out and drink after you've just been to treatment, I mean, it's not their fault. They just don't understand. The sacrifice isn't the same for them as it is for you because they're probably going to go home at the end of the night and who knows when you're going to stop drinking. It's not risky for them to go out and take a drink, but for us as addicts, alcoholics, it is. It also says here, you might take a new way home from work, for example, to keep from going past your favorite hangout. Maybe avoid the road that's going straight to your favorite bar. Maybe you don't want to see those lights on and all the people crowded outside and what appears to be such an amazing time. The second part, and I think this was one of those things that I mentioned as being universal across all recovery programs, and that is build a support network. Have people that you can call. Have other sober people in that network. You could do counseling, therapy. I mean, get the help that you feel like you really need. And don't look at one person and what they're doing to stay sober. And let's say they're doing very little to stay sober. And you think, okay, look how easily they're able to do it. And they're not going to counseling and they're not doing this and they're not seeing a doctor and they're not going to as many meetings or whatever the case may be. And it's different for everyone. It's a good way to figure out, like, what do I need to stay sober? What do I need to start to recover? What do I need to be content sober? If you feel like you're not doing enough, expand that support network. I mean, counseling's not for everyone, but I was one of those people that said I would never do it. And I was forced to do it for 3 years in drug court and it was amazing. I didn't realize the benefit of it until I was forced into it. And it was one of those things that I never would have done on my own. And all of a sudden I was forced into it and was grateful that I did it. So the next one says, find a peer support group. And this is the 12 step, which I understand. I've had an amazing experience with 12-step programs. That being said, I think you shop around. You don't go to one meeting and that's it. You just stay. Shop around. If you don't like what's going on in a certain meeting, or the key to look for is like when you're listening to people share throughout the whole meeting. Like I understand some people are going to have to they're going to have to just kind of spill their guts and get something out emotionally so they could just feel better and get some relief. But as you're sitting there throughout the meeting, see if anyone is talking about some solution. Like, are most of the shares based in the problem, or are there people kind of telling you how they're staying sober, what they're doing to stay sober? That's what I like to look for a lot of time. Next one says manage your urges. While most last only 15 to 30 minutes, it can be hard to fight them off. You might try a substitute like chewing gum or a personal mantra. I am stronger than this and it will pass. Yeah, the whole idea of managing your urges is probably sounds a lot easier than it really is. I've found for me it helps to call someone, especially early on. If I was really going through it, it helps to call someone because a lot of times that call could end up being anywhere from a couple minutes to who knows, maybe an hour. But typically, by the time you are done talking to someone and you've kind of just told them straight up about your urge and what you're thinking and let them kind of give you some advice or at least just listen back or maybe they can relate with some of their experience. By the time that is over, a lot of times the urge has at least gotten better. It also says staying busy is a great way to distract yourself. I think staying busy is great. I think I had the hardest time getting sober for a lot of years because I would go to sober living and I wasn't working and I was hanging around the house all day with a bunch of people that were newly sober and we were just talking about drugs all day. And it was no surprise that I ended up going to do drugs. Like I needed some structure in my life and work was key. Like, there's nothing worse than first getting sober and just sitting in a sober living with nothing but time on your hands and you're not working. It's a bad recipe. It never ended up well for me. Some people are able to do it. For me, I was not. I like this one. Find an activity that means something to you. The biggest thing for me, and I've said it many times, is exercise. If you are physically capable and you are sober now, I believe that some form of exercise is mandatory. It was a game changer for me. Now, where I went wrong in the past is it became my only program of sobriety. I would drop everything else and just work out, and that never ended up well. I'd be in decent shape sitting in detox again. So I've found that exercise for me has to be something that is added into my recovery program. It's a big part of it. It's a key part of it for me. Because for me, I work out for the mental relief. It helps with anxiety. It helps with depression. It helps me just cope day to day sober. And you don't have to be cycling, miles and miles. You don't have to be powerlifting. You don't have to do anything crazy. You just have to exercise. It's going to get our brain chemicals going. It's going to get our endorphins going. It's going to help with that depression. It's going to help with that stress. I always walk out of the gym feeling better mentally. Always. I think that is something that, and it could be walking. Like it doesn't have to be some hardcore exercise or lifting. It doesn't. It just has to have some consistency. And it's got so many good kind of indirect rewards that come from it. And that's the better sleep, the better eating, a routine. It's good stuff. This next one is I don't know. It says learn to manage stress. That's another one that is I mean, obviously you need to learn to manage stress, but that's easier said than done. I'll tell you something that I ran into in early sobriety that was hard for me. I didn't plan ahead. If I had work the next day, like, I didn't have my stuff ready to go for work. I would set my alarm last minute. Most of the time, wouldn't make food for the next day. I wouldn't set my alarm early enough. I'd be running late. My day would look like this, and I was working at a grocery store at the time. That was like my get well job. I wake up in the morning, I wake up kinda late, I didn't set multiple alarms, I'm rushing to take a shower and get dressed, I'm hopping into the car, I am speeding on the way there, every time someone is stopping in front of me at a red light, I'm like, "Come on, man, why are you driving so slow?" It's a big panic, and early sobriety, I was making it way harder on myself than it needed to be, way harder. It took me time to kind of realize, okay, plan ahead, get up a little bit earlier, minimize whatever stress you can. That's basically the key, the magic to it all. And I fail at it all the time and I kind of learn things and kind of have to adapt and change stuff up. But I've learned that there's a lot of stuff I can't control. But the things that I can, it helps to try and to be good about doing that. And a lot of that is the time management. I used to stress myself out all the time over things that I could have, that I had control over, just time management stuff, preparation. I love this next one. It says, learn to relax. Yoga, meditation, reading, a nature walk, massage, a bath, music, breathing exercises. This is another one of those that is absolutely key and something that I had to learn through failure. I've told you guys on here when I used to work 24/7 and go to a million recovery meetings, and eventually I was just doing too much and I had drug court and school, and eventually I just get burnt out. The relaxing is key. I love the reading. I love music, yoga, meditation. This stuff is all good. I love a walk too. And you'll find it's different for everyone. So your idea of relaxing isn't going to be the same as mine. That's kind of the key in this whole recovery journey is taking some of this advice from other people or kind of looking at what they do to stay sober and doing some of it the same and doing some of it different and finding, if someone else is a big yoga fanatic and that's how they relax and that's part of their structure and it helps them with even spirituality and it helps give them drive and purpose and motivation to stay sober, like that's awesome. But it might not be the same for you. So you've got to find your yoga. This is another good one. It says, manage physical pain. If you've had a surgery or an injury, your doctor will be careful with the pain medication they give you. Some of the drugs can make you more likely to relapse. Yeah, I luckily have not had to take any opiates since getting sober. I had a ton of work done on my teeth. I mean, I had 2 implants in the very back where they had to drill into my jaw and I remember him trying to give me opiates. And I was like, look, man, no, if I can get through this without it, that would be amazing. I didn't want to risk anything. I knew, I just didn't want to feel it. At that point, I'd been sober for a couple of years. I was like, I don't want to risk it. I don't want to feel that feeling. I don't want to, because I know what's going to happen. It's going to wake something up inside me that's going to, the allergy that we've talked about on here before. It's like, I don't even want to mess with that. All right. We got 3 more. This is an interesting one. I don't hear this much. I don't hear people talking about this. I think it's pretty cool. It says, prepare your story. Decide what you'll say if someone asks why you're sober. You can try to avoid the conversation, but it's good to have a response ready in case that's not possible. If the question comes from someone you know well, you may want to say that drugs or alcohol became a problem for you, so you're staying away from them. Actually, I have talked about this on here. It's good to kind of know your story. It helps. It just helps minimize a little bit of stress. It helps if you get in a situation where you don't want to be caught off guard. My thing that I tell people, I used to tell them just everything, and now I say, and I know I've talked about this on here before, but I just say like I went hard when I was younger, and now I don't do anything. And you don't. The amount that you disclose is up to you. You don't have to tell people everything. It's complete. That's another thing that is kind of customized or tailored to your own sobriety. Is what is your story? What are you going to tell people? How much are you going to disclose? Are you going to be one of those people that is just insanely transparent and says everything? Are you going to be one of those people that doesn't like to really talk about it too much? But I like how they said that alcohol became a problem. Most people, no matter what your story is, if they're your friend, your family, your coworkers, if they're people that support you, they're going to be cool. They will. Most people are going to say good for you. All right, two more. Second to last, be the designated driver. That gives you a quick and easy explanation for why you aren't drinking. It also gives you a sense of purpose that can help you stay focused. I like that idea. That's cool, especially in the beginning. Allows you to just that extra like comfort of not having to explain yourself. Oh, I'm driving. Now the last one is try a mocktail. And it says in social situations where people are drinking, you might feel more comfortable with a drink in your hand. I've never tried this. I know that everyone is different. I know for me, some of the non-alcoholic beers have like an insanely small portion of alcohol in it, and it's not something that you're ever going to really feel. I just don't risk it. My thing, I had to kind of, my whole idea with being clean and sober was I wanted to reach a point where I didn't need to like try and fit in when it came to drinking and using. Like, it was okay if I just was living a different life now, living sober. Like, I wanted to get to a point where I could be around other people that were drinking, and I didn't have to run from it, because it's like, alcohol is everywhere. We cannot hide from it. There's gonna be situations, if I'm gonna live a somewhat social life, where I have to be able to go places where people are drinking, and I have to know inside myself, look, this is okay. Alcohol, at least this is my opinion, my idea. Like, I don't see alcohol as the problem. I see the problem is the way I react to alcohol. So if people want to have a couple drinks and enjoy themselves, great. That's amazing. Even if they want to drink a bunch and get drunk, it's up to them. I have no opinion on it. I don't see it as bad. I don't have any judgment of it. I just realize for me, I can't partake. So I never really, I mean, I could see how in the beginning, though, if you're going out with some friends and they're drinking and you're kind of thinking, kind of like the designated driver thing where you're going, okay, I could just say I'm a designated driver. I'm not quite ready to get into my whole addiction, sobriety stuff. Maybe it's a friend you haven't seen in years and they don't even know about your addiction. Maybe your addiction stuff started to happen when they had already moved away or something. You're just not quite ready to disclose to the people that you're going to be with that night everything that was going on in your addiction. And I could see like, okay, I have a mocktail in my hand and people think I'm drinking. I don't get questioned. I don't have to, tell my story. I don't have to explain to people why I'm the only one at the place not drinking. So I get that. Have I ever tried it? No. My thing was I'm okay with them knowing I'm not drinking. But again, like that doesn't mean it's right and other people are wrong. You want to try the mocktail thing? Go ahead. It's to each their own is basically my opinion on that. I like the idea, though. I like the idea of that's why I read this stuff. Some of it can be pretty obvious, it seems, when you're reading it, but there's a couple of them that I wouldn't have really thought of. I like the prepare your story. It's good to kind of just get as many ideas on how to stay sober from as many different people as possible and kind of navigate that and come up with a program for yourself. Like, it doesn't hurt to hear a million different ways that people are staying sober. It's all positive stuff. And you can either apply it to your life or just let it fly, whatever you think works best. But I think it is a good idea to talk to as many people as possible, get as much support as possible, learn from as many people's experience as possible. Raise your hand, tell people about what is going on with you, have that support network, be the designated driver, have the mocktail if you have to, find a passion, exercise, work out, run, take a walk, take the bath, yoga, reading, whatever the case is. I think it's good to explore as many different options or ways to be content in life sober as we possibly can, to give us ultimately the best chance we possibly could have at living a sober life. All right, you made it through another episode. Thanks again, and if you'd like to collaborate or come on the show, please email me at thesoberfixpodcast@gmail.com. Have a great day.